In a passionate address at the opening of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament's winter session, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel is standing on the front lines against the Islamic Republic of Iran's war against the Western world, and that it's slowly but surely dealing heavy blows to its enemies on all 7 fronts. The details in the following report.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday evening said Israel has severely damaged Iran's defense systems and its ability to produce missiles.
אני מבקש להדגיש, אלה לא היו מחרטות שתקפנו. כן, זה לא מעבדות נפץ קטנות, כפי שאתם מכירים מיהודה ושומרון או מרצועת עזה. אלה מפעלי מוות תעשייתיים, בהיקף תעשייתי. ופגענו בהם פגיעה של ממש.
Speaking at the opening of the Knesset winter session, Netanyahu said Israel is the only country standing in the way of Iran's axis of evil and its aspirations to take control of the Middle East and the entire Western world. Responding to criticism that his coalition lacks a clear strategy for the ongoing war, Netanyahu said this.
האסטרטגיה ארוכת הטווח שלנו, שאני מקווה שתושג בזמן יותר קרוב, היא לפרק את ציר הרשע, לגדוע את זרועותיו בדרום ובצפון, לגבות מחיר כבד מאיראן וגרורותיה, ולמנוע מאיראן נשק גרעיני.
Turning to the ongoing war in Gaza and Lebanon, Netanyahu said that Israel would ensure total victory and that on the day after, Hamas will no longer rule Gaza and Hezbollah would no longer sit on Israel's northern border. He also pledged to return all of the hostages. The Prime Minister also laid out his vision for peace in the Middle East.
אבל היום שאחרי כולל עוד דבר חשוב מאין כמותו. אני שואף להמשיך בתהליך שהובלתי לפני כמה שנים עם החתימה על הסכמי אברהם ההיסטוריים ולהשיג שלום עם מדינות ערביות נוספות.
And over 1 year after the October 7th massacre and the revelations throughout this year of the extent of UNRWA's alleged involvement in Hamas terrorism, the Israeli Knesset, defying international pressure, has passed a law to outlaw UNRWA from operating in Israel. All the details in the following report.
92 בעד, 10 נגד. אני קובע כי הצעת החוק התקבלה בקריאה השלישית ותיכנס לספר החוקים.
At the opening session of the Knesset on Monday night, Israel passed a new law banning the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency UNRWA from operating in the country. A second bill that passed 87-9 will also significantly curtail UNRWA's activities in Palestinian territories by banning Israeli officials from having any contact with the UN body.
This legislation is disconnecting the relationship between Israel and between this organization. They will not be able to facilitate their activities or their infrastructures or their headquarters in Israel. If the United Nations is not willing to clean this organization from terrorism, from Hamas activists, then we have to take measures to make sure that they cannot harm our people ever again.
Israel has accused UNRWA staff of complicity in the October 7th massacre, and its facilities have been systematically used by Hamas to carry out terrorist attacks against Israel. Additionally, UNRWA schools have been repeatedly found to teach hatred and incite to violence against Jews and against Israel. International condemnation of the decision from the UN and Western countries, including the United States, was swift, citing a fear that the decision would worsen the humanitarian situation in Gaza. UNRWA responded to the law, saying that it was an unprecedented move that opposes the UN Charter and violates Israel's obligations under international law. But Jerusalem has pushed back against the critics, saying that Israel is prepared to work with other international partners to ensure the continued flow of humanitarian aid. And joining us now with more on the Knesset decision to outlaw UNRWA is member of Knesset for the Likud party, Boaz Bismuth, and one of the co-authors of the UNRWA bill. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So this is a dramatic decision. Some have said it's long overdue, but how will this actually affect operations on the ground, both within Israel and in Gaza and Judea and Samaria?
Well, my bill is very straightforward. On the contrary, when I presented my bill, and I really had to fight for my bill, and we had so many meetings at the Foreign Affairs Security Committee concerning my bill, I think 11 meetings, which was a lot. One of the reasons why I was fighting, not only because it's a just bill, because this bill is something that Israeli also expect to come, but there's also a bill that, it concerns, Israel. In order to put it in action, you only have to ban UNRWA from operating in Israel. Don't forget, we're a sovereign country. We are the ones who decide. And this is why my bill is very straightforward. And in fact, I would also add one thing. If we say that what was before the 7th of October, it will not be after the 7th of October, this is one of the things we Israelis are expecting. Terrorism organization like UNRWA, supposedly to be a humanitarian organization, will not operate from Israel. Point.
Now, the Knesset defied immense international pressure in passing this bill. Many countries have expressed concern over UNRWA's role in providing aid to Palestinians, saying there is no other organization that can handle this task. What is your response to this criticism?
Very simple. There will not be a vacuum. We're Israel. We're supplying humanitarian aid to our enemies. Don't forget, during the Gaza war, Israelis didn't like or don't like, all this huge amount of humanitarian aid entering Gaza, yet we do it. For years and years and years before the 7th of October, hospitals in Israel, are treating people from Gaza. This is who we are. Meaning what? When I close the offices of UNRWA in Jerusalem, when I expel, when UNRWA will not be able to work anymore from our country, Israel, it does not mean that there will be a vacuum. Meaning all the humanitarian aid that all the supply or assistance or services that the people living in Israel are receiving from this agency, they'll receive it from us. And let me tell you something. In all those meetings we had at the Knesset, members of the Israeli municipality of Jerusalem were there, other organizations, and everybody is aware of the fact that services such as water, health, education, all this will be given to them. And let me tell you another thing. For example, in 2 or 3 of the meetings, you had a representative of the budget ministry, because they also know that Israel, this bill will cost money to the country, but it's also a question of sovereignty, a question of services, and Israel not only will continue to give those services, it will even upgrade them.
And so looking to East Jerusalem, to Israel's eternal capital, where UNRWA operates, UNRWA schools continue to teach hatred, to incite to terrorism against Israel, from within Israel. So will the task of, let's call it, denazifying, re-educating the Palestinians in East Jerusalem, will this task also now fall on Israel?
So first of all, a little correction for me, because it's always, difficult for me to listen when people say East Jerusalem, because you don't say East Paris, East London, East Canberra, East Tokyo. No, there's eastern quarters in Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is unified. Jerusalem is our eternal capital, undivided, and this is how it should be also in our thinking. And this is why I supply services to people who live there. And you said beautifully, and you said very correctly about UNRWA textbooks, that they teach kids with those books. Don't forget, let's give an example. We don't speak like this, just blah, blah, blah. Take a woman like Mugabe. Mugabe, if you read a textbook with which UNRWA is teaching, Mugabe is the hero. When you check who's Mugabe, she's an evil terrorist that committed crimes. So I can guarantee to you, when I said upgrade the services, by the way, so little Arab kids in Jerusalem will have the merit, the credit, to read or to be educated as an Israeli child, and knowing, facts. And to the international community, I would say that if you're really keen of a Middle East with stability, if you're keen for a Middle East with security, if you are keen for a Middle East with peace, why not at the end of the day of the journey, then UNRWA cannot be part of this an actor in our Middle East. And this is why our bill, or my bill, if you want, the one I presented, is so important also for the future of the Middle East, because we want really to have, after this war, which is rough, which is tough, with so many casualties, we bury our kids every day because our soldiers are our children, don't forget that. At the end of the day, we want to make a restart with actors who are not terrorists. UNRWA on the 7th of October has decided to be not only supporting terrorism, but be a terrorist themselves. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday at the Knesset, when I presented my bill, was sitting there looking at us, the parents of Jonathan Samarano, who was hijacked by a social agent. This is how he called himself, a social agent of UNRWA with an UNRWA car. So with all due respect, this is something Israel cannot permit. This is something we shall not permit. And the last thing to the international community. You know, yesterday was a session where you had 45 ambassadors watching us. And they saw the head of the opposition, Mr. Yair Lapid. He was rough in his speech. He was violent in his speech. He was very, very, how would I say, I think it wasn't also very decent in his speech because the world was watching. The president was beside that. But the same Yair Lapid, a few hours later, voted for my bill, meaning it's a consensus. This is all of Israelis agreed that we have to fight terrorism, we shall eradicate terrorism, and UNRWA has decided to be a terrorist, and this is why my bill is so important for Israel and for the future.
All right, well, let's hope that this bill will indeed provide a better future for Israel and for the Middle East. Member of Knesset Boaz Bismuth, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Amen.
And moving on, do you want to transform your love for Israel into meaningful action? Well, ILTV is proud to partner with Blessed by Israel, a company that brings you extraordinary products handcrafted by the brave pioneers of Judea and Samaria. Every purchase supports their mission and strengthens Israel's heartland. Let's take a closer look at Blessed by Israel and how you can make a difference today.
Support Israel with every purchase you make from Blessed by Israel. The goods they offer from families of the biblical heartland are more than just wonderful products. They're a statement of solidarity and an investment in Israel's future. When you shop at blessedbyisrael.com, you stand against boycotts and uplift the resilient pioneers rebuilding their homeland. Make your purchase count today. Visit blessedbyisrael.com. Shop now and become part of strengthening Israel's roots and securing a bright future.
And today, both the north and south were impacted by drone strikes and with heavy rocket fired in the upper and western Galilee. One man was killed when a large barrage of some 50 rockets fired by Hezbollah hit the northern town of Ma'alot Tarshiha. And the drone threat continued as a drone launched from Yemen hit the southern city of Ashkelon and exploded in an open area, causing a fire but no injuries. Earlier, there was a drone strike from Lebanon directed at Nahariya. The UAV exploded on a pedestrian bridge at the city's train station. Shrapnel from the blast rained down on the area, causing slight damage to a train carriage. And separately, the IDF says another drone launched from Lebanon this morning was shot down by air defenses over the Upper Galilee. And Hezbollah today officially named Deputy Head Naim Qassem as the successor to Nasrallah. The announcement comes as senior Israeli officials are reported saying that negotiations on a ceasefire deal in Lebanon are at an advanced stage. The diplomatic push comes amid reports of Hezbollah fighters abandoning their posts and fleeing to Syria. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
U.S. Envoy Amos Hochstein is expected back in the region in the coming days in an attempt to finalize a deal that would bring a halt to the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The proposal reportedly would leave IDF troops in parts of South Lebanon for a 60-day period. Hezbollah would be kept north of the Litani River, and the Lebanese army would deploy thousands of troops to the border region to prevent Hezbollah's return. The IDF would be required to withdraw most of its troops from South Lebanon while continuing its mission to remove the threat from Radwan forces on Israeli border communities. Israeli officials said that Lebanon's situation has completely changed during the IDF offensive, and now there is willingness in Beirut to establish control in South Lebanon. According to Ynet, Western intelligence sources say that Iran would allow Hezbollah to agree to a ceasefire and perhaps even encourage it, even if the fighting in Gaza does not end. On the ground in Lebanon, there are growing signs that Hezbollah is beginning to break. The wave of desertions is being reported in Arab media, which says that Hezbollah membership was badly shaken by the pager explosions that wounded thousands of its members, and then the killing of Hezbollah chief Nasrallah, and now the ground operation by the IDF have combined to break the will of many Hezbollah fighters. Those defecting are reportedly fleeing to Syrian territory with their families, attempting to escape with their lives.
And it's day 389 of the war in Gaza. The IDF announced the deaths of 4 soldiers killed in northern Gaza. Meanwhile, the army continued advancing in northern Gaza Jabalia, leading to the surrender of some 600 Hamas terrorists after being surrounded by IDF forces. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The remaining Hamas terrorists in northern Gaza had gathered to regroup at the former Kamal Adwan hospital complex in Jabalia. The IDF encircled the complex, trapping hundreds of gunmen inside, including its senior operatives. Those terrorists who were not killed were taken prisoner. 3 brigades surrounded the area, which includes schools and shelters. The IDF helped tens of thousands of civilians to safely evacuate the area. Currently, troops are closing in on any remaining pockets of resistance, and the maneuvers in Jabalia are near completion. The hospital was used as a Hamas terror command center. The IDF seized weapons, funds, and documents. Some of those arrested in the hospital were suspected with links to October 7th attacks. Those individuals were taken to Israel for interrogation.
And over the past 2 days, talks have been held in Doha in an effort to reach an agreement for a hostage deal. ILTV's Ariel Elechiani joins us now with the latest updates.
Yes, thank you, Ladar. So following intense discussions, a negotiation summit concluded yesterday in Doha with reported progress being made towards a unified framework for a hostage release plan. And meanwhile, in Jerusalem, hostage families put together a powerful protest at the Knesset to put pressure on the government to do everything they can to bring their loved ones home. Take a look. Intense negotiations took place in Doha yesterday as high-level officials, including Mossad Director David Barnea and CIA Director William Burns, worked toward a breakthrough in the ongoing hostage crisis. The talks, hosted by Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed Al Thani, reportedly made progress towards a unified framework for a hostage release. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has also proposed a 48-hour ceasefire to secure the release of 4 hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. But Hamas insists on further guarantees, including a comprehensive ceasefire and a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Officials claim they aim to convene a follow-up summit with top intelligence leaders, including Egypt's new intelligence chief Hassan Rashad, and potentially engaging Hamas directly. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, frustration and anguish boiled over as families of hostages staged a symbolic protest at the Knesset. A group of women dressed as 20-year-old Naama Levy, who was abducted by Hamas on October 7th, moved silently around committee members, mirroring the condition seen in a video of Levy shortly after her capture.
It could have been your daughter. It could have been your sister. It could have been you.
The protesters lined up against the wall with faces painted red, while Naama's mother, Ayelet Levy, pleaded with lawmakers to bring all 101 hostages back to their families. While diplomatic momentum builds in Doha, the families here in Israel are urging officials not to delay. They want their loved ones returned home safely and soon.
And now for a little good news. Maccabi World Union, World Jewish Congress, and Keren Kayemet L'Israel Jewish National Fund have just launched a new exhibit titled Unbroken, Israeli Sports at Times of War. The exhibit serves as an incredible testament to the Israeli spirit and incredible national resilience.
Maccabi World Union, the World Jewish Congress, and Keren Kayemet L'Israel Jewish National Fund have launched a new exhibit titled Unbroken, Israeli Sports at Times of War at the Jewish Sports Museum in Kfar Maccabiah. An event last week brought together Israeli sports heroes, the families of professional and amateur athletes, and fans who were tragically killed on October 7th, along with Jewish leaders from Israel and around the world.
To memorialize them forever as part of the Maccabi family and to honor their families for the sacrifice that they've done for the state of Israel and for the Jewish people.
The exhibit explores the stories of athletes and fans who were present during the Hamas attacks. It also addresses the issue of anti-Semitism in international sports and how athletes and sports clubs have responded to the situation.
It's so important to understand the influence that sport has all over the world, and in being able to fight anti-Semitism, to bring people together. And the World Jewish Congress is so proud to be one of the sponsors and to be part of this exhibition, understanding resiliency in sports and the resiliency of the Jewish people.
It also highlights the resilience of Jewish and Israeli athletes in overcoming adversity, showcasing stories of rehabilitation and renewed hope from amateur sports to the Maccabiah Games to the Olympics and the Paralympics.
I want to speak about something that cannot be taken from us as Israelis. Hope. This is our medal. It's for all Israelis. It's for all the Jews around the world. It's a medal for anyone who is searching for hope.
Sports bring hopes because it makes barrier falls. What we try to bring as Maccabi World Union, as the association that brings all the 450,000 athletes of Maccabi all over the world, we send a message of hope and of togetherness.
The exhibition showcases personal items, multimedia displays, and interviews, offering visitors a unique and intimate view of this pivotal moment in history. At the event, several individuals featured in the exhibit shared their powerful stories of resilience, including the wife of Lior Weitzman, 32, from Sderot, who was tragically killed by Hamas terrorists while cycling on the morning of October 7th. Now, his wife Limor is honoring Lior's dream by training for her first triathlon, all while raising their toddler on her own.
My husband, my love. His name is Lior. In Hebrew, the meaning is my light. He is my light. And I'm walking through his light, hopefully to a better life.
The exhibition will be open to the public until March 2025. After this, it will embark on an international tour.
And with just 1 week until the American presidential election, ILTV's Maayan Hoffman reports on a new survey revealing how Jewish Americans plan to vote.
With just 1 week until the U.S. presidential election, a new survey by the Jewish People Policy Institute finds that only 63% of Jewish Americans plan to vote for Vice President Kamala Harris, marking a decrease from support for President Joe Biden in 2020. The survey also shows that 24% of American Jews plan to vote for Donald Trump, with 95% of Trump supporters citing his stance on Israel as their main reason. Over 90% of them believe a Trump administration would strengthen U.S.-Israel relations. A majority of Americans, 56%, say the current administration does not sufficiently support the Jewish state. For Harris voters, Israel is less central, with only 1/3 listing it as a main voting issue. A separate poll by Israel's Channel 12, which surveyed Israelis who likely cannot vote in the election, found that 66% of Israelis favor Trump, while 17% support Harris, and another 17% are undecided. Trump was seen as one of the most pro-Israel presidents, relocating the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and recognizing the Golan Heights, among other moves. Despite Biden's historically close ties with Israel, recent U.S. actions, including pushback on Israel's military efforts in Gaza, weapon supply delays, and Harris's recent acknowledgement of a pro-Palestinian protesters' concern over supposed Israeli genocide, appear to have dampened support for the Democratic ticket among some pro-Israel voters.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines crafted with generations of expertise.
And now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies are expected alongside warm temperatures, reaching highs of about 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, ILTV.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gravelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.